Man has mapped depths that would crush any creature not born there. We have contained diseases that once destroyed civilizations. We have even touched what was once thought to be the realm of the divine. But still, we are mortal. Still, we are chained to the same primal urges as our ancestors and cousins. Primal urges like Schadenfreude. Laughing at others' misfortune is innate to human nature, whether or not we want to admit it. From reality TV to image boards and subforums, technology has only made it easier to keep tabs on our favorite train wrecks. But in the vast bits and bytes of the internet, very few are so free with their personal lives as to all but write their own autobiography, a la Christine Nay Christian Weston Chandler. And in that prestigious category, only one person holds the distinction of being dumb luck incarnate. It's been 10 years since Philip P. Burnell started his YouTube career. In the continuum of YouTube, with some channels becoming just short of household names while others wilt away, where does he land? To answer that, let's take an in-depth look at the death and life of Philip Burnell, better known as Darkside Phil.
That title doesn't make any sense! It's a theater reference, you uncultured swine!
Phil was born April 6, 1982, and came straight out of Bridgeport, Connecticut.
I grew up in Connecticut, where my best friend at the time was murdered walking home. Just walking fucking home, someone pulled out a gun and blew him the fuck away. It was a gang dare, where his initiation was to kill a random kid on the street. So he just walked up and blew him away. You know, he didn't do anything. That's where I grew up. That's seriously, I grew up in a fucking horrible part of Connecticut where that was like a reality every day. I might get shot. My dad one day was going to pick up stuff like milk and eggs at the grocery store and got shot at in the fucking parking lot and held up. You know? Like that kind of shit happens all the time where I came from. So it was always a part of my life where I kind of thought in the back of my head that something could happen like that. Something crazy.
Although crime statistics support what he's saying, this is strange since he himself admits his family was middle class, so you'd think they'd be able to move to someplace safer. But it is what it is, probably nothing they could do. I digress. Although he states he was a veritable angel,
I was very different than the other children. My mom could take me to the local store. And what she would do is she would go to the toy department first, before we looked at anything else in the store. She would say, okay, Philip, because she used to call me Philip. She would say, okay, Philip, pick any toy. And I would look around, ooh, I like that one. And she'd hand it to me and I would look at it. And the whole time we were in the store, I would just look at the toy. Look, oh, it's nice, it's an awesome toy. I would read all the packaging. Of course, I couldn't, very limited reading that I had back then, but I would read as much as I could. You know, look at colorful packaging. I remember back then the biggest thing was He-Man figures. So it was always He-Man. I would look at the figure. So it'd be hours my mom would be in the store shopping for different stuff or whatever. And then finally, at the end of the day, we would go back to the toy department and I would put the toy back. And I wouldn't bitch and moan. I wouldn't demand that my mom buy it for me. I knew that that was just a normal day. She was there to go get groceries or whatever it was we were there for. And that when it was either my birthday or a holiday, that's when I would get my toy.
There is an infamous story following him around regarding a certain birthday gift.
So we're talking, I was still pre-teens, but I was around that age, you know, the 10 to 12, whatever range. And I was heavily, this is the time of my life, I was heavily into comic book collecting. I would read every X-Men. So there were like 4 different X-Men books. I would read every X-Men book. I would read every single, you know, so certain Spider-Man and stuff. I was into it. I was into the Marvel comics at the time. And I remember this one time, I was into, again, I still liked action figures. I was into the X-Men action figures at this time. And at this time I had an allowance, so I would save up my money, and I would spend it every once in a while to buy these X-Men action figures. And I remember, I went to a comic book store one day with my parents, and the Wolverine figure was there, and it was expensive. It was like maybe, I think, $20, $25, when really the other figures only cost like $7, $8, so this one was worth 3 to 4 times more than a normal figure because of its rarity. And I turned to my mother and father, and I said, guys, listen, I want that action figure for my birthday. So, please, what I would ask you, I've never asked you to do this before. We know how rare that figure is. We know we've been to stores endlessly and we've never seen it in the flesh. It's finally here in front of our faces. Please buy the figure now. Hide it from me for whatever, for months until my birthday, and give it to me on my birthday. This will ensure that I will get this action figure because we know how rare it is. And it's the first time we've seen it. And I begged with my parents, and I pleaded with my parents to get it, right? So the way it worked is that maybe once a week we would go to the comic book store. And so like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a row, they still didn't buy it, right? Week 4 we go back. It's gone. We asked the store owner what happened. Someone bought it, and I have not, we haven't gotten any more. We've gone to other, it's so popular, we've gone to toy stores. No one can find this action figure anymore. It's that rare. Because it was the most popular character at the time, Wolverine. He was the rarest figure because he was the variant figure in the box figures that would be shipped to toy stores. So my birthday came and passed, and guess what? My parents go, "We're very sorry, Philip, but we couldn't find the action figure." I said, "I told you to buy the figure. Why don't you listen to me?" Like, it was such a no-brainer. All they had to do was buy it then. They could have hidden it forever. I would have never bugged them for it till my birthday. I knew I was going to get it on my birthday. Because they didn't buy it, I didn't get it. I didn't get that figure. I kid you not. I did not get that figure for almost a year. And the reason I got it is because the figure manufacturer realized it was so popular that they were idiots for not making enough. They did a second run, and of course now the figure was valueless because everyone had it because it was the second run figure. So I did eventually get it, but it was the second run, and of course now it's a year later. Do you really think that something I wanted a year ago is as valuable as, but then I was already starting to move into other stuff. So I give you this advice. If you're a parent, and your kid definitely tells you they want something, and you see it ahead of time, you fucking buy it. And yes, I see someone asking in the chat, yes, my parents did have the money to buy it. They were just fucking stupid.
Regardless if the story was merely exaggerated for comedic effect, or if he really was that much of a spoiled brat, one has to wonder why he told us this. That thought is pretty much a constant with Phil, so just brace yourself.
What I'm doing, I'm eating the crackers. Oh my god. Oh, they don't taste good, but then again, my mouth tastes disgusting. It's full of vomit. I'm eating crackers. And then I look, the crackers are moldy. They expired a month before. I go,
After graduating valedictorian from the Fairfield branch of Notre Dame Catholic High School in 2001, yes, that has actually been proven, by Sparklator on Kiwi Farms. I'll, give you a moment to soak that in.
Oh, fuck me.
A fair guess.
Will the Entrepreneur cheered. He says, "Do you remember what you talked about in your valedictorian speech?" Yeah, I remember it exactly. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, today what everyone wants you to think about is that this is the end of your high school career, right? And they want you to think about how you did in sports. They want you to think about how you did on your report card, and they want you to think about your future. But for a moment, what I really want everyone to do today is look around at the people around you, right? Because a lot of these people, this is the last time you're going to ever see these people. These people are going to move on, and, it's fine, because this is the point in our lives where we kind of have to separate from a lot of our close friends who we've been friends with for 4+ years and start to become adults. Some of us are going to go to university, some of us are going to get jobs, right? And that's kind of the deal here. But really, today, what I feel today is most important for us because it's a day when we can look back and we can think about the experiences that we had here in high school. Even though people want to say, "Oh, your report card, your performance, and your SATs," in reality, what are you really going to remember about high school? You're going to remember your friends. You're going to remember special events, dances, parties, musicals, going out and having fun. That's what you're going to remember when you think back about high school.
I wonder if that Latina chick was real too. Or him being in drama and chess. Anyway, after high school, Phil was pushed by his parents to go to college. He had 4 that he applied to. Fairfield University in Fairfield, Connecticut, Boston College in Newton, Massachusetts, and
2 of them were called Harvard and Yale because I had straight A's in high school, I coasted through all my academics, and I was the valedictorian. Now, it's funny because I mentioned to you that I wasn't with the nerdy group of kids. I wasn't. I wasn't considered the nerdy group of kids. I was actually the enigma, where I was able to ace everything, but I wasn't the kid who had my head in the books all day. I just had this natural talent to be a book-learning person. I would absorb things in class, I would read the books and study at home, and without maximum effort, I would able to ace everything, okay? I had extracurriculars under my belt. I was in silly things like the chess club and stuff like that, comic book club. But I was also in the drama and musical clubs, and I actually had I was doing volunteer work. I was actually working at a Jewish home for the elderly that was right nearby my school. So I had like all this big thing of extracurricular stuff that I had built up over the time that I was in high school just for preparing for college. And I applied to both Yale and Harvard. But here's the catch. Here's the fucking catch, ladies and gentlemen. I applied for financial aid. And that was my mistake.
Pause. All right. As someone who depends on financial aid for any amount of college education, this has always pissed me off. It's simply not true that Ivy League schools dump your application if you apply for financial aid. There are a handful of people in the top schools who are there entirely on financial aid and scholarships, supplemented by some student loans because they work their asses off to qualify for all of that and show that they would be the best investment for the money. There's a shit ton of competition to get into those schools, and the majority race in America is white, so yeah, they aren't going to be blown away by a middle-class white male with high grades. Someone who worked their way from, say, homelessness to high grades is a hell of a lot more impressive than someone who coasted through high school. That fact alone shows dedication and perseverance, which the school wants, since they don't want to pay for half your education, then have you drop out. And that school financial aid, well, there are funds allocated specifically for that, so someone accepted into the school is getting it no matter what. In fact, 70% of people who go to Harvard are receiving some form of financial aid, and about 50% of people going to Yale. The reason you didn't get accepted into a fucking Ivy League school was not because you were a white male who needed help paying for college. It's because you applied right out of a small, subpar high school that focused more on sports than academics, where being the top of your class ultimately meant very little in the big picture, with no degree other than your high school diploma, and you were such a smorgasbord of extracurriculars that I'm guessing you didn't have any standout accomplishments in any one of them. So, overall, you were milquetoast compared to the other applicants, which is not what Ivy League schools are looking for. Which obviously does not mean you were excluded from getting an excellent education somewhere else. Sorry, I've been holding that in for a while. Eventually, he settled on Fairfield University, both because it was local and
Because of my parents. And the bottom line is this. My parents told me, they said, Phil, we want you to go. Actually, I take that back. They said Philip. They always call me Philip. They never call me Phil. They said, Philip, we want you to be happy. We want you to go where you want to go. So if you want to go to the more expensive college, we are absolutely willing to let you go. But understand, it's a more financial burden and everything, and yada, yada, yada. And I looked at the options, okay? And I said, well, if I go to Fairfield University, I'll have this much of a loan that I'll have to take out in my name. If I go to Boston College, I'll have this much of a loan that I'll have to take out in my name, which was a much higher loan. Plus, the financial burden on my parents was going to be more initially to even pay the tuition because, like I said, the scholarship that I was offered for Boston College was much less than the one that I was offered for Fairfield University.
First majoring in computer science because of the tech boom, he switched to a business major with an eventual specialization in finances halfway through his degree because
1D in a class, and that was the class that I dropped out of because that was the teacher who I was going to fucking break his face because he wouldn't teach us how to do computer programming, right? And after that, I just didn't care. It was like, I'm just going to pass. And I did. I just passed, and I was good.
It's unknown if at graduation he had a job, but he was still living with his parents, so presumably had ample free time and extra money for an outside hobby. I'm led to believe from cultural phenomena such as The Wizard that during the 80s and 90s, arcade games were very popular, and not just things you wasted time on waiting for your pizza to be cooked. Whether because it's relatively easy to dominate the local arcade rather than win a real fight, or because he genuinely enjoyed the genre, Phil was hooked almost as soon as he was introduced. He soon had a tight-knit circle of friends he'd spend the majority of his free time with. However, it would be during his time in the fighting game community that the internet at large would first be exposed to the one and only King of Hate, and the wake of drama that seems to follow him wherever he goes. A short list of these FGC incidents, not necessarily in chronological order, are as follows. He won a $250 grudge match during ECC 8 against two players of some stupid group called the Empire Arcadia, I guess they had some grand, mysterious design that Phil cracked. They were being secretly sponsored to see if fighting game tournaments were worth big companies' time. I'm just mentioning this because everyone involved is a try-hard dumbass, and it's kind of funny. On February 21st, 2006, he places 4th and 3rd, respectively, at the Jesters Waterford, Connecticut weekly Marvel vs. Capcom 2 / Capcom vs. SNK 2, then bitches that the games are a waste of time. He complains to the staff of Shoryuken about how a separate entity handled an exhibition match of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which presumably went before SRK's tournament, but still had no connection to them. In April of 1999, he made a joke about his friend T. Carter's death in a group chat. Kind of. It reads very weird, and I don't understand why he brought up T at all. It seems like this dude Viscant told him to bring T along as a joke, like, oh, you better bring your friend with you to save face for you by winning himself when you lose. But from the context of this and Viscant's response, it seems like that was said while T was alive? So, why rub it in his face? Or if this is also a joke, why are you making jokes about your dead friend? At the 2008 EVO, DSP disappeared on Viscant when promising to play him for $100 later that Friday night. He promised this after joking around with Viscant and another individual about molesting underage girls in a public burger joint. Viscant, why are you admitting to this? In January of 1999, in the first known posting of the King of Hate, he joined a Google AltNet group about Street Fighter II under the name Woe Moses, and gave his genius explanation of why West Coast players, Alex Vale in particular, seem to be better than East Coast players. It's because they're all man-children with no real-life responsibilities. He got promptly dogpiled, as was proper for any big-headed high schooler. He apparently also joined a Sonic AltNet group, but the link doesn't work, so I can't verify it. In May of 2009, Phil got disqualified from his first match at East Coast Throwdown because the announcer called him for 20 minutes straight, and he didn't show. When Phil finally appeared, he complained that he was in the bathroom all that time, and that sweet Johnny Cage did not know what he was doing, and this is all bullshit. Johnny stood up on his chair and asked the crowd how long he had called DSP for. The answers all summed up to a long fucking time. DSP later went on, SRK, to complain that Johnny should have accepted the help he and his friends had offered because they all knew how to run tournaments, and Johnny did not, and because of this, the entire event was ruined. I was unable to verify Phil ever taking part in any behind-the-scenes work in tournaments, and I've never heard him talk about it beyond this little rant, although there was this on his website. As far as I know, Impact never gets mentioned outside of Top Haters, and is promptly dropped a couple months later. Speaking of which, sometime in early 2003, Phil made a website titled Top Haters to parody the website Top Players. His thought process went something fighting game community hate boner. There is a lot of material here, from movie reviews to articles on cosplay to ITC updates, recommendations to watch Naruto, and 2 issues of a webcomic that he dropped because he got too many insults about it. This is the man who claims the King of Hate moniker comes from turning the hate of his haters into fuel for his creative and competitive pursuits, by the way. There is also information about exclusive edited interviews and an ECC8 trailer he made, but I can't find any further information on them. In 2008, he white knights for 8-Bit Nikki on an announcement video for the Game Heroes. His comments are, oddly, only visible in the archived version, not in the comment section of the video as you see it today. Anyway, he white knights because people are complaining that Mickey could buy a 360 on his own and doesn't need to beg on the internet for one. Phil tells them Mickey didn't beg. A dedicated and handsome and smart and funny and very generous fan sent their own refurbished 360 out of the goodness of their heart. He also says they're jealous and to go die in a fire. In August of 2003, his main account on SRK got banned for posting live updates of the EVO tournament, including unverified rumors. He was the only one doing this, by the way. Although he retracted these rumors, it appears the event coordinators, who also run Shoryuken, wanted to do some damage control and deleted both of DSP's update threads. Phil, in a fit of rationality, then went into the official EVO update thread and said, quote unquote, "The person who deleted my..." Fuck. Oh, it's going off the page, that's why it's not showing up. That's bad. Phil then, in a fit of rationality, went into the official EVO update thread and said, quote unquote, "Whoever deleted my threads is gay." He was promptly IP banned and went on to bitch about it on his website. There does appear to be some bad decision-making on the coordinator's part in this, but Phil did not help himself. In 2006, under the username of Punish3er, because his main account got banned off of SRK, he decided to come into a thread titled simply New Female Thread, and complain about the female posters complaining about the dickheads coming in to sexualize them. This led to a genuine incel rant. I'm sick of editing this, so I'll save the dramatic reading for a separate video. And all of that is only the information I both found and thought worth mentioning. Now I'm going to end this segment and stick it unceremoniously until the middle of last year's editing, because I'm tired of sifting through threads where nerds who are real good at mashing buttons try to act tough over the internet. This would culminate in him winning 4th place, the highest placing American, at the 2005 EVO Championships for Super Street Fighter II Turbo. Street Fighter? At the 2005 EVO Championships for Super Street Fighter II Fighter. Fuck me. At the 2005 EVO Championships for Super Street Fighter II Turbo. But even this early and quite prestigious achievement was tainted with controversy. The PS1 port of the game used at this event suffered from slight processing glitches that could lead to unresponsive controls in certain situations, as well as a bug allowing the character Guile to throw 2 sonic booms on screen as opposed to the usual one. Quite a few of the top American players boycotted the event because EVO had never allowed home console versions before, and because the port was seen as inferior for competitive play. It's been speculated that had these players participated, or even if the port had been more accurate, Phil would not have placed as high as he did. Indeed, he never placed at the main EVO event again, and tied for 7th at the next Super Turbo event, Texas Showdown 6, despite giving some tough talk in an interview.
All right, we got the man of all hate, the one and only DSP. Darkside Phil. I call him Phil, because Phil's cool.
How about you let these people know the real Phil, the real reason for the hate. Let them know.
The real reason for the hate is because people just have massive disrespect. I mean, for years these same guys are on top, and yes, I'm talking about John Choi, I'm talking about Alex Valle, playing ST, placing, okay, they're good, but to disrespect the people that got top 8 at Evolution, to make excuses because it's on console, it's ridiculous. And it's unacceptable. For Valle to say that just because he didn't enter the tournament is the reason that the top 8 got top 8, that's bullshit. And I think that he needs to really prove himself and actually redeem himself for saying something like that, because it's disrespectful to everyone who did place top 8.
I mean, you're hearing it straight from Phil. I mean, anything else you want to say on that, my friend? Anything else? That's it?
You know, everyone says that I'm a big hater, but I only hate on people because they hate on me first. So everything that I say on the internet may be in good fun, but it's just in reaction to all the other bullshit that goes on behind the scenes. We'll see today what really happens when Valle and Choi play me on an arcade cabinet and see what new excuse they can think up.
There you go. You heard it from DSP. Straight from DSP. DSP, thank you. Check out the shirt.
Hate this, bitch!
Hate that. DSP for the win. Thank you for your time, homie. Thank you for your time. All right, man.
At some point after college, Phil was hired to work at Wells Fargo selling mortgages, a job he says he could not do for long because it shocked his moral core.
In the year of 2005, it was a unique and really tumultuous year for me. because I had moved out of my parents' house, got a 3-bedroom apartment that I was sharing with 2 roommates in more northern Connecticut. It is actually still southern Connecticut, but it's the northern part of southern Connecticut, because I wanted to move next to my job. At the time, I was working for a place called Wells Fargo Financial. It was a place that gave out mortgages, credit cards, personal loans. But the catch here, which they didn't disclose to me when I was getting hired, is that it was basically mostly to people with bad credit, and we gave incredibly high interest rates, but the catch was we would give it to people with incredibly bad credit, and what we would do is, let's say, for example, these people really are in dire straits. They can't pay their bills anymore. They've got $20,000 in credit card debt. They have no money to pay, and so all their bills are past due. We would give them loans for up to almost 100% of the value of their house to pay off their credit cards. And of course, we'd charge them an exorbitant amount of money in interest to do it. But for them, they would see it as savings. Hey, at least we can now make the payment monthly and we're not going delinquent and it's not killing our credit. The problem was 2 things. Number one, a lot of these people, they already racked up $20,000 in credit card debt and then they put that on a mortgage. Guess what? I'm going to go do it again because now all my credit cards are free and clear. So they racked themselves right back to the situation that they were in, only this time they had no equity in their home to solve the problem. Number 2, the housing market crashed, and so even though we may have given them 100% of the value of their home on the loan, guess what? Now their home value is only this. They have a loan for twice the amount of money as what their house is worth. So all this was happening while I worked there. And quite honestly, I had a manager who didn't like me at all. We weren't compatible. He lived one kind of a lifestyle, I lived a different one. Not compatible, and for whatever reason he just didn't like me, and he decided that he was going to give me the worst possible leads in the office, and I struggled to even close loans because he would give me people with such low credit. I would work to try to get them a loan for 2 months, and then they would get denied in the end because their credit's so low. And I'd be like, what do you want me to do? You give me the worst possible leads in the fucking office. You do it every month. To the point where I called in the district manager, the district supervisor, to tell her. But guess what? I found out she trained the guy, so she protected him. So anyway, the bottom line, the reason I'm telling you this, I was quitting. I had to get out of there. It was either going to be fired or I had to quit, okay? So I quit my job. But the thing was, that whole year, I had traveled the country to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I knew that I was moving out of my apartment. I had an apartment, like I said, this 3-bedroom apartment. I knew eventually I'd be moving out, but it was still like 6 months on the lease, and I didn't know where I was going to get the money from to pay the bills. I didn't know anything at that point. I did have a job interview lined up for Best Buy in a few weeks, but basically it was like a couple of weeks before Evo. And I said, I want to go so bad because I've been practicing this, everything I've been doing, waiting for, but it was a huge risk because I didn't have the money to go. So I did one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life, and please, I beg of you, unless you're on your last legs financially, do not ever do what I'm going to tell you I did to pay for my Evo trip. I took cash advances on all of my credit cards. So we're talking thousands of dollars in cash advances.
After this dramatic look into the depths of depravity, Phil left the company to work in customer service at Best Buy. In 2005, he was hired to work at Helicopter Support Inc., a subsidiary of Sikorsky. It's speculated that since his father, David Burnell, worked there, Phil was hired only mostly because of nepotism. He has stated several times that he was good at his job, which would seem to be evident by the fact he stayed with them for 5 years on salary, even receiving commendations. In 2009, Phil started a YouTube channel under the name of Darkside Phil, a moniker he had already been using, shortened to DSP, in the fighting game community for quite a while. Where did he get it from? Well, I personally thought it was from Darkseid, the dumb comic book villain, and some have suggested it was a misspelled reference to Star Wars. But no, his inspiration was even dumber.
So, Darkside Phil, where did it come from? Well, back in the day, I had a really terrible online name, Whoa Moses, and I've told the story a million times of how I got that name. It was just me trying to log into AOL for the first time in the 1990s when I was in high school. Couldn't get any of the names that I wanted, so I just made something up on the... Actually, I had to randomly generate it, and it worked, and I was like, fuck it, and I kept that for a while, and I started posting up on things like Street Fighter message boards and the like as Whoa Moses, and I hated that name, and I always wanted something catchy. I wanted something that, for example... if I went to a game tournament, someone could remember my name, and always remember, it was an easy name to say, something catchy. And at the time, I was a huge fan of WWE, and RVD had just joined the WWE, and I liked it. Rob Van Dam, RVD. It's catchy. You remember it. It's something very easy. 3 letters, right? Synonymous with someone is really cool. So I wanted something like that. And at the time, okay, there was a band, and I'll be honest with you guys, I don't remember the name of the band at all. They were really bad. Now I look at back at music at the time, and a lot of the music and shit at the time that I liked, I think is terrible now. It was a band that, like, they were rappers, but not really. Like, they played actual music, like with like a band would, with guitars and drums, but they were rappers too. It was so fucking weird. I don't even know. It was basically the same. There was this time, like, where all these bands, like 311, anyone remember them? They were like a hybrid. They would play rock music but rap instead of really sing. So I don't know who they were. I don't even remember the name of them. And they had this one song called Butterflies that was very, very, very popular in the mainstream. And it was being played on MTV constantly or whatever. And it was like stuck in my head because back then you would hear the same songs over and over so much you get this music stuck in your fucking head. Now they had another song called Darkside. All right. And I could kind of remember some of the lyrics, like how it went, like dun 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 Darkside dun 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 dun.
He used this channel to archive the Street Fighter events he went to, as well as practice games with local players. The first video uploaded on his channel is almost pathetic. It's entitled Midwest Moment Number 4, Day 1 Setup. Let's take a look.
It's only 13 seconds long.
A sweeping view of a mostly empty convention room with nothing of note going on and no commentary. If you were wondering about the title, well, the first Midwest moment, along with a large chunk of numbers, is nowhere to be found. The ones that are there are uploaded out of order. It would be assumed that the missing parts were taken down by YouTube for some reason, but I personally like to believe they had problems processing, and Phil never bothered to fix it. In 2007, Phil was diagnosed with a severely herniated disc.
Well, late in 2007, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with a pretty serious back injury. And my doctor pretty much told me, listen, for the rest of your life, you're either going to need a really, really serious operation, or you're going to have to stop carrying heavy things. You're not going to be able to drive long distances. You're not going to be able to play sports. And yeah, it was a life-changing experience for me. I've had to adjust my life in some pretty serious ways. But the good thing about it was, I'm a gamer. I love video games, and video games aren't anything that are physically strenuous. So I said, you know what, this is a good opportunity for me to maybe branch out. I've been seriously into Street Fighter for quite a long time. Why don't I branch out into other games?
In 2008, Phil played the PS3 game The Lost Odyssey, but became stuck on a particularly tricky boss. Not having his Twitch chat to cater the answers to him, he had to do a little searching.
Then, late 2008, I still remember the moment this happened. I was playing Lost Odyssey, and I got to a certain boss in Lost Odyssey, and I could not beat this boss. And I went to GameFAQs, it was the old school place that everyone went to get their information on how to beat games. But Lost Odyssey had just come out. There was no facts or anything explaining how to beat this boss. I said, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to beat this guy? I didn't want to go out and spend $25, $30 on a strategy guide just to figure out how to beat one boss. So I went on a website called YouTube, and I typed in Lost Odyssey, and up came one set of videos. Only one person had actually gotten to that point in Lost Odyssey. And I'm watching the guy fight this boss, and I'm learning some stuff from it, but the thing that really got me was, this was his let's play of the game, but there was no commentary. It was just straight, direct capture footage. And for me, it was like, wow, this is great. I'm learning, but I really wish he was explaining what he was doing when he was beating this boss. What was his mentality? What strategies is he using? Because it was kind of hard to interpret what he was doing when he was trying to beat this boss just by seeing it. And then I got an idea. I said, you know what? I got a camera. I literally have had this camera for 5 years. I've never used the thing. Why don't I just hook it up on a tripod, start recording myself playing games and see what happens? So I created this channel, Darkside Phil, on YouTube, which some of you might be familiar with, way back when, and I started recording myself. Now it was funny, because I didn't have a widescreen camera, it wasn't an HD camera, it was this little, really crappy digital camera. I had a widescreen TV, I had to edge it on the side of the TV to try to get the whole thing to fit in, and it sounded horrible, it looked ridiculous. But the thing was, unlike what everyone else seemed to be doing on YouTube, which was, we want to do these master level playthroughs where, we beat the game with a speed run and we never have a problem. I'm just going to play the game and mess around and have fun. So a couple of the first games I played, like Mercenaries 2, Dead Space, I didn't necessarily do a full playthrough. I just recorded the parts of the game that I thought were funny or frustrating, and I did commentary over it.
The first non-Street Fighter gameplay uploaded is Star Wars The Force Unleashed, Star Destroyer gameplay.
Sucks!
Which is also his first attempt at a video series.
Grab the fucking thing, goddammit. Grab it. What the fuck? Go to the wrong fucking side.
The first long-form playthrough he does outside of the Gameplay Sucks videos is Saints Row 2. With a steady income and a steadily growing channel, Phil decided it was time to move out of his parents' house and into his own condo in spring of 2009.
First time in a long time, I actually have a steady job that I fairly like. It pays me pretty decently. As you know, as you can see here, I am in my new condo, so obviously it pays me pretty decently that I can afford this place.
Things were going pretty well for him for the next couple years. He placed at EVO West 2006, EVO East 2007, hung out with his friends, enjoyed his job, and had a growing YouTube channel. At some point, he joins Google's AdSense program, and fans Chris Furtado and Tio offer to build him his own website. Phil even tries to kickstart his own idea for a YouTube show, the beginning of the now infamous Project 7. Unfortunately, the Burnell curse that made him lose out on his Wolverine toy and tainted his EVO 2005 victory followed him to his first well-paying, stable job. And in September of 2010, he was laid off due to cutbacks.
What's up, everyone? It's DSP here, and probably this is going to be the most honest video I've ever made. It's going to be shooting from the hip, but I'm also going to be very careful what I say, obviously for legal reasons, because of what's going on right now. And I really don't know where I'm going to go with it. This is actually take 2, because take 1 I really just rambled on like a fucking moron and didn't know what I wanted to say. But basically, as you know, past 2 years I've been making videos on YouTube, and this has always been my side thing. This has always been my hobby, the thing that I do for, free time, because I love video games. So I do video game playthroughs, comedy videos, game reviews, things like that. Well, bottom line is this. I went into work today and they laid me off. So I no longer have a full-time job. I am unemployed.
Does our valiant hero pick himself up and apply to other local businesses? What happens when Chris Furtado offers more assistance? Will he ever find his soulmate? This and more answered on the next Detractor Ball V. This program has been sponsored by the DSP Foundation. Remember, every dollar spent at the Etsy store or donated through the coffee account is not going to Phil. Thank you for watching.